Shut.
All right, we're going live. Hi, everyone. Leanne and I are just chatting and we just went live without even realizing it. Welcome to our conversation today. We've been having a lot of these conversations. And so what we'd like to do is just begin by having you let us know you are here. And if you could just put in the chat, hey, I'm here, I see you. That helps us to talk to somebody instead of just talk to one another. Today, we're going to be talking about learning how to live from a stronger sense of yourself. And we want to really describe that for you. So if you can let us know in the chat that we are live, that would be a big, big help for me. I always feel like I'm just talking to myself or talking out in cyberland if I don't hear from you. And so all of you have been very, very gracious all week to come on, hop on the chat and say, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. So let's see if someone is here. Or no one is here. I don't know. I hope someone's here. There we go, Treva. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And Sherry, thank you. We are live and we see that you are with us today. So good morning, Joelle. Good morning. Leanne, Coach Leanne is with us and we are going to be talking, hi, from New Zealand. Oh, it's a different, I don't know what time it is, your time. I think it's probably 10 o'clock at night. I think it's about 12-hour difference. Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to be talking a little bit about who we are. You know, I think it's really hard sometimes. We talked about it in yesterday's live about how often we get described by our role. Like, I am a wife. I am Howard's wife or Wayne's wife. I am Ryan's mom. This is who I am. But this isn't who I am. This is maybe part of what I do, but this isn't who I am. So today we're going to be talking about a concept about your identity. Who are you? You know, the Bible gives us several different clues about this important part of us. And I didn't have the time to look up all the verses, but maybe Leanne and I can just brainstorm back and forth. But there's a verse in Ephesians, for example, where Paul says, don't let sin control you. Don't allow your anger to get the best of you. So when Paul talks like that, where's the part of you that is supposed to do that? When the Bible tells you, guard your heart above all else, where's the part of you that does that? What part? Is it your emotional self? Is it your cognitive self? What part of you has that executive function role in your life decisions, right? God has wired our brain to have this executive function called the prefrontal cortex right up here that is supposed to kind of take charge of things unless we're in danger. And if we're in danger, the other part of us back here, the little amygdala, kind of overrules the front part and just, and you start running really fast or whatever you start doing. But generally, so we're just going to be talking about general decision-making, general life, general meandering through life. The part of us in our body is called the prefrontal cortex. But what is it, the part of you? When Paul talks about that, how do you discern, especially when you're feeling strong emotions? You're feeling a lot of anger. You're feeling a lot of disgust. You're feeling a lot of contempt. You're feeling a lot of uncertainty, anxiety. Where do you make decisions from? Especially when your feelings are also strong or your internal chatter is really strong. So I'd like to just ask a couple questions about where do you make those decisions from and listen to the chat. And then the next question I want you to answer. So when you're in an emotional state, at least for me, what I used to do is just make my decisions from that place. So if I was angry, I would tell someone off or I would shut down. If I were anxious, I would stop doing what I'm doing. If I were anxious about going somewhere or if I were anxious about, an opportunity that came my way, I might withdraw. I might not do it. If I was so anxious, I would let my feelings decide what my next step would be. So if you don't do that, if you don't let your feelings decide, where's the part of you that decides? When the Bible says, don't let your feelings control you. Don't allow anger to control you. What other part controls you when anger doesn't? All right, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, Grace Abound says. And that's another part of us, our mind. But sometimes our mind is just as crazy as our emotions. Our mind is thinking all kinds of negative thoughts or untrue thoughts like, I'm not worthy, I can't do this, I'm not enough, I can't possibly handle this, I'll never get through this. And so our mind is also not necessarily the best decision maker. It gives us information, as does our emotions, right? So I want to propose to you a concept. We're going to draw it out on this whiteboard. So you're not going to see my face because I'm going to try to put this up here. What part of you makes an executive decision is this part, your values and your virtues. So we're going to put this. So in the chat, I want you to, while Leanne and I are talking a little bit about our own values and virtues, because just like every ice cream is ice cream, but every ice cream has a different flavor to it. Every person has different priorities in terms of what goes in here. Like some people might have making a lot of money is a high value for them, right? And their virtues are, they would compromise their virtues in order to make a lot of money. So that their virtues of honesty or integrity aren't as important to them as maybe being shrewd and a good moneymaker. And so what are your virtues and values that run your life? And so Leanne, can you name one that's yours?
Yes, I can. So for me, I would have to say what I'm really focusing on right now is wisdom, that I am wise. Sometimes, Leslie, I can forget who I am in Christ. And so I need to pull up some I am verses with God. And I need to be reminded that I am his girl, that I am chosen, that I am loved. And the only place that I'm going to get the truth about who I am is going to God's word. And so I'm really focusing in on wisdom as one of my values or virtues, and these, if I could tag on to what you shared, Leslie, our values and our virtues are the principles that we live by, right? It's the principles that we live by. And sometimes our experiences shape it. And I know for me, I have been kind of a foolish girl at different times in my life. And that's not who I want to be. And that's not a value that I hold. If you were to ask me, do you want to be a foolish girl? I would say absolutely not. Can I act foolishly if I don't know who I am? And if I'm not reminded by scripture and my friends, my near and dear ones around me, I can fall into that trap. And so I'm going to stick with wisdom and being wise right now. What about you, Leslie?
Yeah, so I would say wisdom is definitely one of my highest values and virtues, but I think another one for me is generosity. So I believe in being generous, and I love to be generous with good boundaries, but love to be generous in forgiving, generous in extending grace, generous in providing for other people's needs at times. And so generosity is a virtue of mine. And here's where it helped me make a decision because I saw something I wanted, something that was kind of expensive. And I thought to myself, I don't really need any more stuff and I could use this money. And generosity, because that's an important value of mine, helped me decide I could take this money and do a lot more good this way. Whereas if I hadn't had generosity, my emotional pull toward this object of what I wanted would have made that decision for me. Now, I'm not saying that I don't always buy stuff. I buy stuff plenty. So don't think I'm, living in a poorhouse. I'm not. but I think sometimes we have a decision to make about where we go in certain things. And so I use my values, my virtues to help me make that decision, not my emotions, because my emotions will always take me in a place usually that I end up feeling bad about me, especially my negative emotions. I won't say all the positive emotions, but even sometimes my positive emotions, like sometimes I'm having such a good time doing something fun that I'm irresponsible and I don't feel good about myself because I let go of some deadlines. I didn't write my blog like I was supposed to in a timely way. And I put my staff, in deadline mode because they have to, have time to redo things. So I think sometimes our emotions can lead us in places that later we don't like who we were in that moment. Eat too much at a party, drink too much, play too much, have too much fun. And I'm not against fun. I like having fun. In fact, I don't have enough of it in my life. But sometimes it isn't a good decision maker just to do that. So I'd like to know what some of your values and virtues are. We're going to continue this conversation to help you even better make better decisions. But here, sorry, I have a frog in my throat. So here's where, when Paul says, don't allow anger to control you, anger isn't a value or virtue, it's an emotion. So we're going to put the emotions over here. We're going to make a different category for emotions, and we'll put those in red because they're hot usually when we feel them strongly. So we're going to put our emotions over here. So we're going to just label it with feelings, okay? And somebody mentioned thoughts, and so we'll put thoughts because these are also inside of you, okay? So we're going to put your thoughts here. Now I'll get this in the picture. And then if we put a big circle around this whole board, that's you, okay? So if we have our virtues and values and we have our feelings and thoughts, with a double screen, it's not as easy to show. I should write it on a piece of paper. With your virtues and values and your feelings and thoughts, it's not as easy. So we see that we have feelings, we have thoughts, but which part of us makes those decisions, right? And so if I'm having feelings of wanting to buy something, that's not bad. It just is. If I'm having thoughts that, I'd really like that new diamond necklace, nothing wrong with those thoughts. Okay, but where do I make the decision to execute? Or if I'm having feelings of anger and rage, and my thoughts are, this is so unfair, and you shouldn't have treated me that way, and I'm being abused, and my values and virtues are, hey, do no harm. I'm not a person who harms other people. Well, then when Paul says, don't allow your emotions to make your next decision, get rid of those emotions. Well, who does that for me but my values and my virtues? That I don't want to feel this way. I might need to have better boundaries, right? I might need to have really strong boundaries. I might need to call the police. That would be wisdom. But I don't want to hate. I don't want to sin in my anger. I don't want to say ugly things to someone else just because they said ugly things to me. At least that's what my values and virtues are. So what are some of your values and virtues are? Let me just go through the feed and see what some of your patience, good steward, boundaries to match values, good stuff. Okay, are values and virtues the same? If not, what are the differences? Okay, so my values are that I'm not going to do any harm. Okay, I'm not going to intentionally harm someone with my words or my money or my power. So I have some power. I have power over my grandkids. Physically, I could, smack them when they're being a little smart, or I could do harmful things. That's not who I'm going to be. That's not what I want to be. So one of my values is I am not going to do any harm. One of my values is I'm going to be kind and generous. My virtues are that I am that. So my values are that I kind of want to be that. My virtues are I am that. So it's a similar kind of thing, but we talk about our virtues in the present tense, or even our character qualities, the present tense. And the reason we do that is that's how God describes us. You are chosen. You are loved. You are valuable to me. You are precious. You are redeemed. Even when Gideon, he called him specifically. He didn't call everybody to be a mighty warrior. But when he called Gideon, he said it in the present tense. Gideon, you are a mighty warrior. When God called me to be a writer and called me to do this work on the internet, he said, Leslie, you are going to be a voice. Not you will be someday. And it didn't even happen. When he called me, I was 40. I didn't come out with my first book till I was 48. I didn't come out with The Emotionally Destructive Marriage till almost 20 years later. So understand that calling you are, when he said you are a writer, and I'm like, I don't feel like a writer. You've heard this story. I don't feel like a writer. Remember, God, I told myself I couldn't write. I can't. And he said, that's who you are. I've made you to be one. Now go do it. And so I just practiced and practiced and practiced for 8 years. I practiced, took classes in writing. I had mentors and coaches because that's who God said he was teaching me to be. A wise writer. So it doesn't happen overnight, but we talk about that in the present tense so we don't lose sight of who we are.
Yes. I would have to say another one of the virtues that I'm trying to grow in is calm. So when I was a little girl, I don't know if anybody else, so the value is calm. The virtue is self-controlled. Okay. Yeah. So when I was a little girl, on my report cards, my mother saved them and she turned them over to me when she was moving out of her house. And on my report card, it repeatedly said, Leanne needs to develop self-control. Okay. That has been my thorn in the flesh because I'm a pretty high energy girl and I can get a little bit excited on both sides of the spectrum, having fun as well as getting angry. And
she's got the red hair, doesn't she?
Yep, the little fiery red hair. There you go, a little spiky. This kind of speaks to my personality. But the Lord is speaking to me in a lot of ways about, Leanne, you are calm. You are my girl. You are not full of chaos. You don't need to go there because my thoughts and my emotions can take me there. And so I want to put on the clothing of self control and calm. And that's on me. Because guess what? People around me might provoke me. And that's when I get to decide who is it that I want to be. Do I want to be that little 8-year-old girl that needs to develop self control? Or do I want to step into my values of being calm? Because in calm is wisdom, and in wisdom is calm. So, at least for me. So, I
Yeah.
have a lot of different tools that help me to do that. And oh, thank you, Conchita. I see you definitely identify. Yes,
Yeah,
with
let me just
that.
answer Sherry's question really quick because I think this goes with what you're saying. Is wanting to make sure your family is taken care of a value or a virtue? That's a value. But virtue would be I am financially responsible. I am safety conscious. Those would be your virtues. But so your desires are sort of your values. So I desire calm. I desire, and then your virtues are the character qualities that you build in yourself because of the values that you desire. Okay.
So good. So
Yeah.
good. And I think gratitude, I love that, Linda. You choose gratitude every day, even when going through a valley. And you said also an encourager. And I think that I love that you brought that up. Gratitude is the antidote to my selfishness. Gratitude is the antidote to a lot of things for me. And, tapping into that is also one of my values is that I am grateful.
And this is just picture this. Let's say that you're going to the mall, Christmas shopping, and you're encountering all kinds of obstacles like I did yesterday. I was trying to just mail something at the post office, and there was a line of 50 people, and I needed a box at UPS first, and there was another line of 50 people, and I just wanted to get my stuff done, right? Simple. I just want to get, but so I'm starting to feel upset. I'm starting to feel agitated because I've got 50 other things to do when I get home, and I didn't plan for 2 hours to be out. I planned for 1 hour to be out, and now I'm going to be out for 2 hours or 3 hours. And so my thoughts are, oh, I don't know how, I'm going to get everything done that I need to get done today. So I'm starting to worry in my thoughts, my feelings, my body is starting to get agitated. So what do I do with all that? Well, my big circle says, I don't like myself right now in this place. What am I going to do about it? Just like, hey, don't let yourself stay so angry. It doesn't mean you're never going to get angry. It just means get rid of it. So what antidote do I apply? So right in that moment, picture, you're all stirred up, you're getting frustrated, your thoughts and your feelings. So your thoughts and your feelings, my thoughts trouble me, I am distraught, they go together. But your big circle comes in and says, how do I want to show up in this line? How do I want to be in this moment? If I don't think about that and grab a hold of that, I'm going to show up like I think and feel, like a crabby, irritable woman who's not getting, what I want, which is I want to get out of this line and I want to get done with this, right? So, but what do I want more? I want to sit in that line with gratitude that I have a life, that I have feet to walk on, that I can be in a line and not be home with COVID. There's lots to be grateful for, even in that moment. So if I can switch to the virtues and values channel versus the momentary affliction channel, right? Like Paul tells us, for our momentary afflictions are light compared to. So when we look at our values and our virtues and we can begin to make decisions, how am I going to be in this moment? How do I want to show up in this moment when my thoughts and my feelings aren't in line with my values and my virtues? Then who gets to decide where I go? It's wonderful when we're all in alignment. And sometimes we are. I'm at church, I'm worshiping the Lord. This is where I want to be. This is who I am. I can be all aligned and that feels great. But honestly, a lot of times we're not in alignment. Our feelings and our thoughts are, I can't do this. This is too hard. And God's saying, go in the strength you have. And I'm like, I can't do it. Where's your values and your virtues coming through them? Right? How do you make your decisions?
Well, and so oftentimes, the labels that we can have put on us over time, we are so much more than a role. And God created us really unique, and we can forget that. And we have an opportunity to discover who is it that God really created us to be, and what do we hold dear, and are we showing up the way that we want to? Because I believe that our values and our virtues drive us. And so the more clear we are about our values and our virtues, the easier it's going to be to make conscious decisions that honor who God made us to be. Because I often find when I'm working with women that when there is conflict, either inner conflict in our heart or outer conflict with other people, it's because there is a violation or a what's the word I want?
An
An
offense.
explosion of values colliding. The colliding, that's the word I wanted. So if somebody values accomplishment, they're going to work late, they're going to, pour all of their energy and their attention into making sure that they get the task done. Somebody who values connection is going to make sure that everybody's doing okay and everybody's voice is heard. Accomplishment and connection can collide, and then we have conflict. So
That's
knowing our
right.
values and the values of people that we love and care about, we can get all excited talking about this topic. But when we know our own values and virtues and we live from that space, and then we give others permission to know their values and virtues and become a student of them, makes it a little bit easier to navigate this thing called life together.
And I think that's where it helps us to be respectful that somebody doesn't share our values and virtues. And they may not be totally apart, but if somebody really values, so let's say your husband values financial security. And so he works really hard and he values, accomplishment and success. And so he works really hard, but that hurts you in that you don't have as much together time because you value family time and you value, intimacy and and he doesn't not value those, but he doesn't value them to the same degree you do. All right. So sometimes we get into this war where I'm right. My values are more righteous and my values are more right than yours. My political beliefs and my values around my political beliefs, whatever they are, helping the poor or saving unborn babies, they're very different values. And they aren't always in the same political party. And so, my values are more important than your values. And so our values can be different, but each person's virtues can be the same. All right. So the virtues of kindness, compassion, respect, self-control, those are virtues, even if we have different values. Right. But when we have those virtues, then when someone doesn't share our values, we're not antagonistic and disrespectful and demeaning to them, because that would be against our virtues. Now, we might feel those feelings sometimes in an argument, especially with someone who's disrespecting us, but our values and our virtues make the decision. So I think it's really important that when we're having conversations with one another, especially as believers, if you're a Christian, we share some common values and we ought to share some common virtues. And we also may have some different values as a Christian. I just finished reading a book where her values are very different than a lot of the values that people I hang with are. But she has taught me a lot by listening to her values from a biblical perspective. And I think that she's onto something, and I want to learn more from her. So I think that we have to be careful that we don't just put everybody in a bad camp. You're bad, you're unspiritual, you're ungodly if you don't share my values. Now, virtues are different, because if we're Christians, we're also to embody the virtues of the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, and self-control. Against such, there is no law, right? When you have those virtues and you act out of those virtues, then you can get along with anybody, even if they have very different values than you are, right? So what we want to talk about here is not just Christian virtues, because those are great virtues, but what are, even above and beyond that, what are your personal values and virtues that are important to you? What do you want to be? What do you want said at your funeral? That's a really good way of understanding what you want. So you probably, most of you, even if you're a good cook, it's not a virtue or a value. It's something you're good at. Like, nobody's going to say at my funeral, oh, Leslie was a good writer. No one's going to say that. It's something I do, right? Now, they might say she was very fun grandma or she was a very generous, neighbor. They might say those kind of things, but they're not going to say she was a good cook unless there's nothing else better to say about me. And so what do you want said about you? That would be some of your values and virtues.
I love that you brought that up, Leslie. I was just at a funeral of a dear friend this last week, and it was interesting what was shared about her. And one of them was that she lived every day like it was her last. And I thought, wow, that really stuck with me. It was really beautiful. So we will be remembered. And what do we want to be remembered for?
Yeah, Kelly is saying something, and she said, my husband can do whatever he wants, always has. He doesn't even act like a husband, has never been faithful. So Kelly, that's who he wants to be. Those are his values and virtues. So his virtues are, he doesn't have noble virtues, right? He has virtues of, I want to get away with it. I don't want to have any consequences. I can be a scumbag and everybody should just accommodate me, right? And so you have to decide, do you want to do life with someone like that? And you have some hard choices to make. But here's where it's easy when we're in that situation. And not all of you are in that situation, but when you're in that situation, all you do is you get deformed in your big circle. I'm going to put it on here because it was harder to do it on the big board. But you get deformed in your big circle because all you're caught up in is you're caught up in your emotions. You're getting legitimate ones of anger, hurt, anxiety, resentment, bitterness. All those things would be normal in your situation. But when we get caught up in that and we don't say, who do I want to be in this situation? Maybe I want to be a woman who doesn't put up with this. Maybe I want to be a woman who's strong enough to not have to be scared to live on her own so that she doesn't have to put up with this. Maybe I want to be a financially stable, secure woman because I want to leave this situation and I'm not going to live like this. So those are parts of your big circle. So don't get caught up in the emotion. Just like if someone robbed my house or smashed and grabbed something, I have choices to make of how I'm going to handle that. What they did is wrong. It's terrible, right? It's terrible what your husband did. But I have choices about how I'm going to handle it. And I'm not going to handle it. It's okay. Just come and take everything in my house. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have no boundaries. But I'm going to have to work on the hatred in my heart. And then I'm going to have to say, what kind of locks do I need to put on my door so that doesn't happen again? What kind of things do I need to do to recover from this, not so that it doesn't keep repeating itself? And that's part of who you are as your virtues and your values. My virtues are, I'm going to forgive, but I'm not going to ever talk to you or be with you again because I don't want you to harm me again. And I have a value of taking care of me. And that's important. I'm important and I'm not going to let you harm me if I can help it. Right? And so these are where I think oftentimes we just get caught in our feelings of anger and hurt and that victim mindset. You were a victim of your husband's selfishness, his immaturity, his sinfulness. And now what? Where do you go from there? How can you be an owner of your life? You are a victim of his treachery, but how can you be an owner of your life? Where do you go from here with that? Right? And that comes out of... So here's just a little chart we used in the webinar. If you weren't there, I'm just going to repeat this. So identity, I'm going to decide how I'm going to be. Then you do those action steps and you have feelings. And usually, remember when we talked about I can't, and we said I can, and we said, you know what, I'm stronger than I feel, so I'm going to do it. And how do you feel after you do that? You feel stronger. But when you make your decisions out of your feelings, like my husband hurt me and I'm going to tell him off and I'm going to go have an affair, let him see what it feels like. And so I go do that. And then how do you feel about your identity? Does that make you proud of yourself that you did that? Does that, not regardless of whatever happened between the two of you, does that make you feel like a more strong woman that I can get any man to? If you want to cheat on me, I can cheat on you. And we just react to each other with you sin against me, I'm going to sin against you, and you hurt me and I'm going to hurt you. And I mean, look at our country, look at our political, that's what's happening. Is that pretty? Is it making our country a better country? Is it making our, no, it would be better to have some boundaries and some dialogue. Yeah, for sure. And so we're trying to help you grow strong to be the person that God called you to be, regardless of the circumstances, because we're going to live in perilous times. We're going to live in perilous times, whether they're in our home or in our nation. Perilous times are coming. How do we handle that? And so we want to invite you to ask questions about this for you to develop your identity, your big circle, we call it, because it's your bigger circle. It's your other circles aren't as big. Your thoughts and your feelings are not as big as your values and your virtues. That's your bigger circle. So we want you to learn to live out of this place, feeling your feelings, thinking your thoughts, being aware of that. And usually we are really aware of this. In fact, we start to talk about ourselves like, I am my feelings. Like, I am angry. I am hurt. That's not who you are. That's not your values and virtues. It's just your feelings. So let's say I'm aware I feel hurt. I'm aware I feel angry. I'm aware I have stinking thinking. I'm aware that I'm thinking anxious thoughts, that I'm having doubts about God. That's really great, so that you can decide how you're going to handle that versus not being aware at all. And this part is blocked off from you, and you're just living out of feelings and thoughts, and some of which are harmful and destructive to you and can be to the decisions you make. And so we really want to help you build that big circle, that self-controlled identity of who you are, that stability that grounds you when your feelings are all willy-nilly. I mean, I want to be a good grandma. I want to be a really good grandma. I wanted to be a good mom too. And I was trying to help my little granddaughter with some math this weekend because she was struggling. Her two sisters don't struggle like she does. And so it's embarrassing to her. And she gets kind of caught in her emotions of shame and I'm not good enough and I can't do it. And she gets a little attitude and then she shuts down and doesn't want to learn. And in that moment, I was feeling like I wanted to shake her and say, you're smart, you can do it, but that wasn't going to work with her in that moment. Right. But it was tempting to kind of just get emotional myself, like either irritable or depressed that I couldn't help her, all those kind of feelings. And I felt those feelings, but I didn't let them decide how I was going to be with her. Right. But if I wasn't conscious of that, I would have just been reactive back. And why can't you listen? Stop acting like that. What's wrong with you? Right. And that's not how I wanted to be with her. That's not how I wanted to show up with her in that moment. And so if we're not conscious, if we're not aware that we have choices, and even in that moment when we're feeling frustrated and irritated by someone else, especially a little, but sometimes even a big one, how do we show up in that moment? And at the end of the day, I was happy with the way I handled myself. And you know what, at the end of the day, she wasn't happy with the way I got a little text, Grandma, I'm so sorry. She wasn't happy with the way she handled herself. And good for her that she was mature enough to handle an apology to do that. So what we want to do is we want to open it up to questions, if you have any questions about this, and to really help you establish that. And if you already know that you're struggling with that, or you want to be a part of one of our groups that we're going to start in January, we invite you to be empowered to change. And Empowered to Change is a 6-month coaching group, 12 sessions from January to June. We meet twice a month, 90 minutes each session. So it's a good 90 minutes of interaction with a coach on your specific situation. So you'll have teaching in between times from me via video. So you can watch it anytime. There's not a scheduled time, but you'll have a scheduled time for your coach to meet with you and 15 other women or 14 other women, 15 people in a group. And you're going to talk about these things. You're going to talk about, how do I grow me up? How do I grow me strong? How do I grow me generous? Whatever your virtues and values are. How do I even become aware of what my thinking is and my thoughts? I'm so shut down. I don't know what I feel. I just feel blah. And to really understand your emotions, your thoughts, and who your virtues and values, who do you want to be when you grow up? When you mature, which is what God calls you to mature and live a holy life. When you mature, you might be 60 and still not mature yet. So when you mature, who do you want to be? Who is that person that God created you to be, from the seed to the oak tree, from the caterpillar to the cocoon to the butterfly? So we want to help you be empowered for that change process. And if that's something that interests you and you'd like to be a part of that small group coaching process for the next 6 months, then go to leslievernick.com/change. We have a few spots left. Most of our groups are almost full now. So some of them are completely full and shut down, but we have a couple openings left. And we're going to be having our first get together this Friday so that we can give you some tools to get through the Christmas season, and also develop our Facebook group so that you have some support immediately. So that you don't have to wait till your first meeting, that you have your support. Your coaches are on that immediately so that we go through a kind of a stressful time in the holidays. And so if you're going to be a part of this 6-month group, we want you to get connected before the holidays. On the 18th, we're going to have this meeting at 2:00 Eastern time for about 90 minutes, where you're going to get to meet one another. You're going to meet the coaches. You're going to get the kind of overlay of the land and just begin to sense what that feels like to be in a small group of like-minded women who want to go in the same direction. It's much easier to run a marathon when you're with people than to do it all by yourself. It's much easier to do something hard in a group than it is to do it all by yourself. And so I would just encourage you to check it out by going to lesliebernick.com/change. All right, so here's some questions. I notice whenever my husband and I have a tough conversation, I get so down. It takes me a good 24 hours to not feel very down and depressed. Thankfully, I no longer yell or have an outburst, but I'm just so sad about our situation. Is this operating from my big circle? My husband says I get quiet to punish him, but the reality is I just need time to be sad about our situation that seems to never improve. So she's wondering if her sad feelings are from her virtues or her emotions.
You know, I love this question. You said that you're noticing. I just want to affirm you. You're noticing, you're aware. And thank you for putting that in. That's a powerful word. And so that tells me that you care and that you're able to be self-reflective. You said that whenever you and your husband have a tough conversation, you get down. What does down look like for you? Right. And so this is where I love doing values and virtues work, because we get to define what down is. I get to define what my calm is. Right. And so when you think of you said it takes you a good 24 hours not to feel very down and depressed. And so the beautiful thing is you say, thankfully, I no longer yell or have an outburst. So that shows me that you, like me, value self-control. You value self-control. And that's perhaps why you're quiet right away, is because maybe that is one of your virtues and part of your value system. And so, yes, being quiet very well could be operating out of your big circle. You're just not fully aware of the tools yet. And we can help you with identifying those tools. And I know when I first started following Leslie, 10 years ago, she had given me permission doing this work that I get to decide who it is I'm going to be, not my situations, not my emotions, and not my crazy thoughts that run through my mind.
Yeah, Leanne, I was just writing this. Here's a tool you'll learn in the very first session of Empower to Change. So I'm going to give you this tool, and you're not in the class yet, but if you're in the class, we'll work through this really hard, a good 3 months of the class. All right. So I want you to fill this chart out. So the situation is you're having an argument with your husband. Okay. You're saying, I feel so sad and down. So write that down. So any of you can do this all the time. You can do it. I'm sitting in a traffic jam and I feel really angry. I'm sitting and having this conversation with my husband and I'm really down or I'm really angry. Write it down. Okay. What are all the different feelings you have? I'm sad. I'm depressed. I'm discouraged. I feel guilty. I feel angry. Whatever feeling you have, you write them down. Okay. So there's a situation. Here's your feelings. We're not going to ignore our feelings. We're going to pay attention to them. They're telling us something. Here's the thing that we often don't pay attention to. I want you to write down all your thoughts here. All right. All those thoughts. And so this is my imagination of what some of your thoughts might be. This is never going to get any better. Our marriage stinks. He doesn't understand me. He doesn't love me. This is so hard. I can't do this. I can't keep doing this. This is ridiculous. Why won't he listen to me? Why won't he value me? Why doesn't he love me? Those would be a few of the thoughts that I have heard women over the years that we've been doing this have. Okay. So now you've got some work to do, because are those thoughts true? Because those thoughts are contributing to your sad feelings. Right? So is it true, all those things that you thought? So let me give you an example of just how I worked with a woman on this. So we did this in the webinar for the woman who didn't say hi at church, but I'm going to do a more serious one. All right. So the situation is my husband left me for another woman. Terrible, terrible thing. Okay. Cheated on me like someone else had. Okay. My feelings are, I'm sad. I'm hurt. I'm angry. I feel desperate. I feel alone. I feel scared. I feel confused, all of those feelings. What are your thoughts? No one's ever going to want me. I'm going to be alone the rest of my life. It's my fault. I wasn't a good enough wife. I shouldn't have said this. I should have done this. Whatever. All right. So you can see by her thoughts that she's causing a lot of her suffering, right? Him leaving her is suffering enough because it's hard to be left and rejected. But by her thoughts, she's creating what we call an empower to change unnecessary suffering. She's adding to her suffering because she's telling herself, it must be me. No one will love me. I'm worthless. None of that is true. None of that is true. But if she doesn't have enough self-awareness to see that stinking thinking and begin to work on that and change that, she's going to suffer a whole lot more pain than just the pain of her husband leaving. And so this is part of what we teach you how to do, is to recognize those thoughts, those feelings, because those thoughts contribute to those feelings of I'm all alone. I'm all alone and I feel scared. Why does she feel scared? Because she's telling herself, I'll never be with anyone else. I need someone to take care of me. I can't do life by myself. None of that's true. None of that's true. But if she believes that, those are her thoughts, then she's going to feel those feelings. And she's not going to be able to live in her big circle because she's going to be caught in those thoughts that are not true. And so when God tells us to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, we got to know what our thoughts are to begin with, right? And so the first probably 4 sessions of Empower to Change, we drill this over and over again in your private coaching groups so that you're doing these charts and you're beginning to recognize, wow, I can't believe how negative I think about myself. Wow, I can't, and there's no shame. This isn't about shame. This is about looking and saying, wow, I wasn't noticing. I was noticing my emotions, but I wasn't noticing my thoughts. And my thoughts are creating some of these emotions, right? Not the situation, but the thoughts. The situation might be creating some, because life is hard. And when people betray us, we hurt. So it's not like you're going to feel wonderful, but all of that self-beating up thoughts made you feel more hurt than you would have had to feel. I hope that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. It's so beautiful. And, this is where, as, going back to that question, you said, my husband says I get quiet to punish him. So what do you know about yourself? Right now, we just even talked about that. You get quiet because you value self-control. You don't want to go off the rails. And so the more clear you get about why and how you show up that you do, then you're going to be able to communicate that to the people closest to you.
And not only that, your husband is telling himself. So here's your situation. His situation is, we just had a fight. My wife is quiet. I feel lonely or I feel anxious because she's punishing me. He's telling himself this here, right? That's what he's doing, interpreting this situation in his own thoughts. And then he has feelings in reaction to that as well. And so when you begin to get this tool down, you can have a conversation. I bet you're thinking I'm doing this to punish you. Or he might even say, you're doing this to punish you. And say, well, you can think what you want to think, but that's not true. That's not true.
So good. It just changes everything.
It
Values and virtues work, and identifying these beliefs and the lies that we can come up with, because ladies, it starts up here with what it is that we're thinking about. There's a reason why our Heavenly Father reminds us repeatedly in scripture to take every thought captive. He wants us to be aware of what we're thinking about and aware of what we are feeling and experiencing. And we don't need to act out of all of our feelings. I know for me, I can be an emotional girl and I can get fired up about some things, like maybe you can too. But who and how do I want to show up is part of my work to do. And that's what we get to do together in these group coaching programs. It is very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, let's go to the next question.
All right. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. It says, I sometimes feel like my church is the one that tells me what my big circle should be. How do I know when it's really me versus my conversation upbringing that is deciding my big circle?
I think she means conservative, probably.
I bet you're right.
Conservative. Yeah, probably spell checked back into what that happens to
Thank you.
Typing something, and it's but yeah. So this is a really good question, and Empower to Change really talks a lot about that because, again, we did a webinar, not a webinar, but a Facebook Live on why we had to teach our daughters not to be so nice. And so sugar and spice and everything nice, that's what little girls are made of. Well, that was the jingle when I was growing up. But the conservative church has also created a jingle for women. And women are, submissive, and they should value only being a mom and not wanting to have a career and only wanting to take care of babies. And they should value pleasing their husbands and pouring their whole energy to creating a great marriage and revolving their lives around their husband's goals and dreams. I mean, that's the script we've gotten, isn't it? As Christian women, that's the virtuous woman. But that's not what the Bible really says the virtuous woman is. If you look at, she had a ton of accomplishments, and we often get like a little exhausted when we look at her story in Proverbs 31. But we'll look at her virtues and her values. She was an independent woman. She wasn't dependent financially on her husband. She was a full-grown adult woman who could care for herself. She made her own money. She made her own decisions. She didn't call her husband when she had to consider a field. She considered a field and she bought it because she could. She was empowered to be an adult woman who was generous to the poor, who did all kinds of amazing things for her family, but she also did things for other people and had her own life. And her husband praised her. And it says that strength and dignity, those were her virtues. Strength and dignity were her clothing, and she smiled at the future unafraid. And so when we think about how the Christian church, the conservative Christian church, has dictated to us who we should be, which is subservient to a man, quiet, meek, submissive, not a leader, not a starter, not a challenger, because that's, being too big for your britches. Maybe God's called you to be a Deborah. Maybe God's called you to be the female version of Gideon. Maybe God's called you to shake up some things by speaking the truth in love. I think of amazing women in the Bible, like Miriam, like Moses' sister, like Esther, like Abigail, like Mary, the mother of God. God used women to be in his story as leaders. And so ask God, you made me in my mother's womb. This is your immature position. As a baby, you're immature. Just like a seed is a seed. It's immature. It's not its full self, right? It's just a seed. Or a puppy is not fully itself yet until it grows and matures, right? And so when God calls us to die to ourselves, in the Christian conservative church, you've been taught, oh, that means you don't even have any desires. You don't even have any wants. You just die to all that, and you just be what everybody wants you to be, especially the people in your household. That's not biblical. When you die to yourself, Jesus uses the illustration of a seed. Unless a seed goes into the ground and dies, it can't grow. It can't grow, but it grows. It doesn't become a nothing. It transforms, like the caterpillar transforms into the butterfly. A seed transforms into a plant. And then the baby plant becomes a big plant. And then eventually that plant bears fruit, right? Flowers, apples, leaves, whatever. And so understand that your church may have had some wrong teaching for you. Your parents may have had some wrong teaching for you, but here you are right now with us, that God brought you here, right now. And God may say, honey, I wanted you to hear this because I've got some amazing things I put inside of you that are not mature yet. And it's up to you now to nourish that, to put yourself into the ground of learning and growing. And it feels hard and it feels a little dark at times. And that's why we do this in a community of 15 other women, because you're all doing the same thing. And so it's easier when you're doing it together and you say, oh, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going either, but let's all hold hands and we'll follow the redheaded coach ahead of us. She's got the flashlight and she's going to take us through this journey of 6 months. So we really can develop our big circle and be empowered to change from a reactive, scaredy cat, more immature woman, whether you're in a destructive marriage or you're not in a destructive marriage. Sometimes we marry a great guy and we still stay immature because he's the hero of our story. He takes care of us, but we don't know how to take care of ourselves. And so our job is to grow into the woman that God called us to be. And that's what we're talking about today. And that's what we're talking about in Empower to Change. So if you're that woman who's desiring that extra growth, but you know that going it alone has not worked for you. It doesn't work for most of us to do hard things all by ourselves. And so I would encourage you to be a part of this group.
Well, and it doesn't work to go at it alone when we have these values and virtues that we've been living that don't really represent us, and that it's time to start replacing those values and virtues, ones that are not based in fear, but based in love of God. And that's what we help you to do. So you can because you've lived with an old value systems in the past doesn't mean you can't create a new value story for yourself moving forward and a new big circle.
Mhm.
And, just like the seed needs to go into the ground to germinate and to grow, it needs sun, it needs water, it needs nutrients, it needs all of that. And that's what group coaching is all about. That is what being involved with a group of women in a community where you're all going that same direction. I mean, I'm thinking of when I was a little girl and I would plant my garden and we would put all the seeds in the soil. And then it would get all that it needed to grow. And then one by one, the plants pop up, the leaves unroll, the flowers or the fruit or the vegetable starts blooming. And there is nothing more beautiful than to witness that. And, as a coach on your team, that's empowering for me. And it encourages me to continue to do my own work. And that's what happens within the groups. We spur each other on, just like
Mhm.
here in this live. I saw in the feed earlier a word that spurred another word for me, and anti-fragile. We do not need to be fragile as women. God calls us to be strong. And what does strong look like? And so perhaps, oh, I'll love it. Oh, I'm looking at the feed. You ladies are really on to this. I'm going to be quiet here for a second because Leslie talked about our big circle and then our small circles. And sometimes the emotions and thoughts that we have are in that small circle and they can hold us captive from even realizing what our big circle is all about.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So let's get to some more questions because we got a boatload of
Mhm.
them.
We
All
do.
right. As I approach my 50th birthday, I feel like I've changed a lot. Same with my husband. My kids are about to leave, and I feel like I'm at a crossroads in my marriage. I don't really feel like I know my husband anymore. He's not a terrible person, but we just don't have the deep friendship we used to have. How do I process this transition from my big circle? So I think this is a great question. And a lot of women who kids are going, I'm sure men feel the same way. It's like we didn't prioritize us, we prioritized our family. And that was your value, and no shame in that. But it left us a little kind of like two ships in a night, right? And I think just to be open and have a conversation about that I valued our relationship and I valued our friendship. And we kind of lost that as being parents, and we were good parents. So you don't have to be critical about that. We were really good parents, but I think we forgot that we still had a marriage, and now our kids are going and we've got to get to know each other again. And I would like to do that. That's important to me. That's your big circle, right? And I'm just wondering where you're at around this topic. And so he might say, I agree. It's important to me too. Okay. So then you're both on the same page with where you want to go as a couple. So what action steps could we take to facilitate that? Do we need to schedule some time to talk because we're both busy? Could we need to face the reality of a busy time that we kind of default to watching TV all night together, but we don't really talk? What could we do to change our patterns so that we accomplish that goal of learning about who we are? And we're different than we were when we were 20 and we got married. We're now 50, and each of us have a boatload of internal change that I don't even know what's happening in your life anymore because we haven't been talking. And I think having that conversation can be very powerful and informative, because it might be that you've grown in a way that he's not interested in growing, right? And he may not be a terrible person, but he might say, I'm fine the way we are. I don't think we need any change. And then that's going to create, okay, the situation is, we're empty nest and I want to get closer and he doesn't. What are my thoughts about that? What are my feelings about that? How am I going to handle that? How am I going to live in that? Am I going to nag him? Am I going to shame him? Am I going to beat him up? Am I going to beg him? What am I going to do? Am I going to get depressed? Am I going to get resentful? You have decisions to make about how you're going to handle your disappointment for sure, right? And what you do with that. But if you're not conscious of that and you don't begin to look at that, this can be a tremendous opportunity for you to grow in many, many ways and develop even good girlfriends and all those kind of things. Because we don't know what God's going to do with him if he chooses to say, I'm happy watching TV all night. No, I don't want to do that. And we get resentful because we think it has to be this way. But you don't know. I mean, Leanne and I have talked about this a lot. We live in a retirement community and we see our friends, dropping over with their husbands, their husbands drop over dead and they didn't have any girlfriends and they didn't, they spent a lot of their time with their husband, which is fine. But all of a sudden he's gone and they don't have a life. And so you don't know what God's up to in building your character right now. And so I would ask those questions for him. But if he declines, I think doing some of that with your girlfriends and building your life and building who you want to be as a 50-year-old adult woman is very important for you, even if your marriage isn't as robust as you would like it to be.
Indeed. And, I just want to put out there too, that if you said, how do I process this transition from my big circle? It's really fun. I know for my husband and I, when we became empty nesters and, I began my coach journey, we did some values work together. So like I have a worksheet, right, on all my different values, and I gave him a copy, I took a copy, and we identified our top 10. So we could, each of us separately, and then we came together and had a conversation. And it was really helpful because we didn't have all 10 alike. We had 5 that were totally the same. The other 5, if anybody knows my husband and I, we're very different people. The other 5 were completely different. And it helped me to understand him better. And I hope it helped him to get to know me better. And so if you're willing to have these kind of conversations, do some values work together. I've done this corporately in businesses too. And it's amazing what happens when other people around you know what you value and hold dear. Really, it's a powerful exercise.
And throughout the curriculum of Empower to Change, you will get some of those exercises that, you can't take your husband and bring him into Empower to Change for sure. That's not for him. But you can certainly say, hey, I've got this values chart. Why don't you circle some of your most highest values? What's most important to you now at 50? Maybe that's different than it, because our values change, right? Our values change as we get more mature. Things that were important to me in my 20s and 30s are no longer important to me. And things that weren't important to me at all when I was 20 are now more important to me. And so we're always in the process of changing. The question is for you, are you conscious of the way you are changing? Because we're either changing for the better or we're changing for the worse. And, we get to decide if we're conscious of that. If we're not conscious of that and we're just living reactively to life and to everything, then we're changing for the worse and we don't even know it. Yeah. All right, let me get to the next question. Okay, so some of this we answered before. Let me see. Mm-hmm. What if someone has spent their lives pushing anger away and become an extreme people pleaser? Is there a place and time when it's a good thing for them to start feeling anger?
I say yes.
I say yes too. I say yes. Feeling anger and acting out of anger are 2 different things. Okay, so your anger is an important warning bell. It's sort of like the red light on your car that says check oil or check engine. All right, you don't want to ignore it. You don't want to ignore it. And so you have bowed into the fear of man. So own that instead of blaming other people. Own that. I have become a people pleaser. Why? Because I want their approval. I'm afraid of their disapproval. I want relationships that I believe that's the only way I can get. See, you've got some work to do. If you're a people pleaser, you've got some of your own work to do. It's not about other people not asking you to please them. Everybody wants to be, have someone please them. It's a matter of handling their disappointment when you say no, right? And you have to learn how to handle that and still feel like a strong, capable, worthy person in someone's life, even if you can't do everything they want. And if you have only people in your life who like you because you are a people pleaser, then you've got some new relationships to build. And Empower to Change would be a great place to start practicing building new relationships, because you have a pattern of being a fear of man person or bowing into what other people want so that they'll like you. And you want to break that pattern, and that group atmosphere and Empower to Change really helps us practice breaking some of the patterns that we've been in other relationships in our life, because it's a safe environment and you have a coach and you learn how to speak up for yourself. You'll learn that in the class. You'll be given exercises to learn how to say to a girlfriend, hey, I've been a people pleaser my whole life and I'm not going to do that anymore because I realize how unhealthy I've been. Instead of blaming her, you've made me a people. No, they haven't made you. You've been. And now you've got to start changing that dance. And it's hard. And so having that support and having the specific script of what to say and how to say it and how to have a confrontation and all of those kind of things, you will learn and Empower to Change.
You know what's so cool about that too is, I've been doing these groups for a long time now, and it's really great to say, you know what, I'm in this group coaching program and I am learning some new things. Can we practice? And you can use that. Say, my coach is working with me on this and I really want to practice it. Are you willing? And that invites beautiful transformation oftentimes into every kind of relationship you could have.
Mm-hmm. So here's another question, Leanne. How can I move past the confusion of always seeing my husband as the wrong man for me when my feelings take over? I get triggered when I'm disappointed with his grumpy attitudes. So let's
Are you inside my head sometimes?
Yeah, let's just practice using this chart.
Yep.
Okay. So husband has a grumpy attitude. That's a situation. Okay. You're thinking, oh, I have to put up with this. He's the wrong man, right? And you're feeling regret, you're feeling disappointed, you're feeling hurt, so you fill it in. You're the one who asked the question, you fill it in. So you're not going to change the grumpy attitude because that's his work. But what could you change here and here? Right? So maybe you could say, my husband's grumpy attitude is his work to do. But my work to do in this marriage is how do I not let his grumpy attitude impact my whole day? That's my work to do. Right? And maybe God had me marry this person because I have to learn how to not let other people's emotions thwart me in my journey of life. And this is daily practice. Right? So that would be a whole different way of looking at it, right? Instead of, oh, if I had married the right man, I wouldn't have to deal with this. Well, let me tell you, if you had married a different man, you would have to deal with something else. It's because we all have a man who's not perfect, right? Just like they have a woman who's not perfect. So whatever he has, whether he's not responsible at work or he doesn't know how to manage money or he can't fix the leaky toilet or he has grumpy attitudes or he's a porn addict, whatever it is, you're going to have, and so pick your poison. I'm not saying that you should stay with a porn addict or all those kind of things, but everybody's got something that they have to live with. That's why the Bible tells us that we have to learn. Part of our maturing is learning to forbear one another because you live with and are around people who aren't perfect. You have kids who have grumpy attitudes. I have grandchildren who sometimes have grumpy attitudes. You have husbands who have grumpy attitudes or, have irresponsible habits. They don't pick up their clothes. They lose, lose their things or whatever it is. There is no perfect person on the planet. So you're telling yourself a lie. If I had married a different person, I wouldn't suffer. But the truth is you would suffer in a different way because there would be something about that other person that would also get under your skin, right? That's true for all of us. And so you have to decide how you're going to be in this marriage. And sometimes it's having better boundaries around grumpy attitudes. Sometimes it's saying, I'm not living with this. If it's somebody who's porn and destructive and has angry outbursts and punching holes in the walls and walking around threatening you, well, that's intolerable. So, but you're not going to change them. You're going to say, I'm not living like this.
That's right. Choices. We have choice.
Mm-hmm. But here's where we stay in victim mindset. Oh, I'm just married to a grumpy man, and if only I had a better man, I wouldn't have this situation. And you don't. The truth is, you would have this situation, whoever you marry, because there would be something about that person that upset you. Whether it's not a grumpy attitude, he's always. I remember talking to a woman in Sunday school. I was teaching Sunday school many years ago before I wrote any books or anything. I was teaching adult Sunday school, and she told me, she goes, "I'm going to get a divorce," and I said, "Really?" I said, "Why?" She goes, "He's too nice. He just gets on my nerves." So he didn't have a grumpy attitude in her mind. He's just too nice. I can't take him. So pick your poison. Everybody's going to aggravate you in some way.
Well, they are. And if we're all going to have different values and virtues based on our life experiences, based on what is our drivers. And I love these questions. They're great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
This is where you get to decide too, who you want to be when you get triggered. How do you want to navigate that and handle it? And reframing that and walking that with other women who want to do the same thing. You found a sisterhood here in our community.
Yeah. There still seems to be some confusion over values and virtues. And so they're very similar, but think of values as I want. This is important to me. So for example, I want to be a kind person, or I want to I want to have impact on this world, or I want to have grandchildren who I have a good relationship with. I want a peaceful environment. Okay, those would be some of my values. That's important to me. This is important to me. So other things that aren't as important to me. So I don't. So some people might say, well, what's important to me is to travel the world. That's not important to me. All right, but other people, it might be really important to them. Right? I want to see everything I can see. I want to go to every museum in town. That's so important to me. That's not important to me at all. Right? Being at peace and enjoying my backyard and just sitting and reading, that's far more important to me. Other people go, that's not important to me. That's boring. All right. So you have to kind of know what's important to you, what nourishes your soul, what's on your bucket list that you want to make sure is yours before you go in terms of what you value. That helps you to know not everybody likes the same thing, not everybody wants the same thing. And then what virtues do you need to develop to make that more likely to happen, right? So I need to be more, so my virtues are, I need to be more wise. So I make good choices in those areas. I need to have good discernment. Those are my virtues. I want to be self-aware. I want to develop a good capacity to be self-aware, to know when I'm off track so that I can get myself quicker back on track. So I get off track a lot because one of my values is to be generous with my time. That's why I do so many Facebook Lives at times, or how I do a lot of free stuff all over the place. All right. And then I get exhausted and I get crabby and I feel like I have no life. And so I've got to reboot and rebalance. But I'm glad that I'm self-aware enough to recognize that so that I'm taking time to do other things that are important to me. Right. So the virtue is the self-awareness. The value is I want to be generous. I want to be kind. I want to give all this stuff away, or I want to do all this other kind of stuff. And then I have to also be self-aware in my virtue self that maybe I don't have good boundaries at certain times, or I need to do other things that are important to me. I'm out of balance, right? And so those are the things that you describe more as virtuous. But you have to know what you want. And this is so important because the church has told us what we should want. Mm-hmm. But what do you want if you were just really honest? And sometimes what we want is unrealistic, and it exposes our immaturity. So in my immaturity, so since I never had a mother and I was the oldest child, I had a mother, but she was never a mother. And I was the oldest child. I've always wanted in my unhealthy self, someone just to take care of me. Like I just want you to take care of me. I don't want to have to take care of anybody else. I just want somebody to take care of me. I just want to, now as my mature self, I don't really want that. That would feel demeaning and like, what? Leave me alone. I can take care of myself, but there's an unhealthy part of me that I'm still aware of at times when I get frustrated or I get, cranky. I just want someone to take care of me and wrap me up in that blanket and just, take care of you. And that's that. So that's not my value really. It's a want, but it's not a healthy want. So you have to have that maturity to discern, is this coming from an unhealthy place in my life? Or is this coming from my true self? And that just takes some practice. And that's what we do in Empower to Change. We give you lots of exercises, lots of ways to discern who's the real me talking. Is it my unhealthy self, or is it my strong self? Is it my mature self, or is it my immature self? We still have both, right? And, even Jesus, he's honest with his emotions. He's bawling his eyes out, even to the point of sweating blood before he went to the cross. I don't want to do this. This is hard. I don't think I can do this. He's battling with himself. His emotions are battling with him, his virtues and values. His virtues are, I'm the Son of God. I do what the Father says. Those are his values and his virtues, right? I obey God. And I'm like, I don't want. He's having these feelings. And this shows me this is the plight of humanness. You're never going to get a pass out of humanness, right? We're all human. And then Jesus made a decision, not my will, but yours be done. I want to love you, God. I want to obey you. Do I feel like it in the moment? No, but I want to. Not you're forcing me to, or the church told me this is what I should want. I want to. This is who I am. That's his.
Well, and to, really, tighten that up with a bow so you can chew on the difference between values and virtues. Values are principles or standards that you live by. Virtues are the qualities that can be, admirable in a person. So the virtues have high moral values. Not all values are real virtuous or desirable or good. I look at my value sheet and, one of the values that is not mine is broad-mindedness. That I wouldn't say that's one of my top 10 values is broad-mindedness, meaning being open-minded, super tolerant. Sometimes that doesn't work for me. And so anyway, and then the values can be subjective, right? And the virtues are kind of more universally accepted and hold a high moral code. So I don't know if that's helpful when you think of the difference. I know these V words, they can be interchangeable and they play around, but sometimes we just, can chew on it a little bit. So I hope that.
Mm-hmm. So I hope that helps you discern the difference. I think that, yeah, some people can have really, like, their value is me. I'm the most important. That's most important to me. This is what I value. I want to be right. I want to be well thought of. I want to be respected. I want everybody to admire me. And those are their values. So then the virtues that they develop out of those values are demandingness, control, using authority, power over. They're not good virtues, but I wouldn't even use a virtue word because virtues really talk about the moral high ground. But I would talk about this is your character. This is who you are, right? This is who you are because of what you value. So those of us who have encountered people with narcissistic personality traits, when you ask a narcissist what's most important to them, being right. Being right is most important to them. Being the first, being admired, though, and they might even not have enough self-awareness to say that, but you can see by their behaviors that's what's important to them. But that is an unhealthy place to be. And so, just because you want something and you demand it and you go after it doesn't make it virtuous. But it is their values, right? It is their values. Some people think, like a sociopath, their value is, if I can get away with it and I can fool you, shame on you. You're the idiot. There's no conscience there. There's no moral high ground. And so don't just say that because someone has values that they're all good values. Like Leanne said, they may be harmful values or destructive values. Hitler's value was to eliminate, his desire was to eliminate the Jews or other people's not values and virtues, but their goal, their main who they are is, I want to be God. Right. I want to be God to you. And that's not healthy either. All right. So I think we've gotten most of our questions. Oh, here's one more. I've been in Conquer, which is our support group for women in emotionally destructive marriages. I've been in Conquer for many months. I struggled with the big circle then. I still do now. It's easy for me to spout off a list of things I used to value and say, I want to be those things now. That would be easy. But the sort of passion about those things is broken. I'm guessing in the end, they'll be the same as they used to be. You might not be able to see any of this from the outside, but there's a difference in living from those big circle ideas out of personal obligation and out of a true internal compass, for sure. For sure. I thought I used to have a true internal compass, but now I'm rebuilding a faith that was nearly destroyed. So yeah, I think that's a comment. I don't think that's really a question, but I totally get that. I had, they call it the deconstructing of your faith and reconstructing of your faith. And we had some wrong ideas about the way God expected us to live as women and as people. And I think a lot of those things, we've been very disappointed by our leadership. We've been very disappointed by the misuse of authority and power in the church structure, the misogyny that's gone on toward women. And it's understandable that you would be deconstructing some of your teachings because they were given to you by leaders who were so flawed and so untrue to who they said they were, that it's easy to even lose our faith. So I appreciate your honesty and that the desire to rebuild what's really important and recognizing maybe what's not really important. And I think the church has had a very narcissistic kind of view of itself in that we're right and you're wrong and it's us and you're they. And, it's a very divisive attitude, and that's not of God at all. And so I think it's time for us to rethink that and what's really important to us. And again, we change. Some things change as we grow older. We start to realize that's not important. We thought it was important, but you climb up that ladder of success and you get there and you think, I'm here, I got it, and it's not like what I thought it would be. Right. And so now I've got to reevaluate what's really important to me. And that's all good work. And if you'd like to do that work in a community of like-minded women who hold some similar values of maybe honesty and integrity and deep faith, and have very different values also, and how to have conversations with them and how to build relationships with them and be one mind and yet diverse and different at the same time, join Empower to Change. It'll be a life-changing experience for you. And it's got some great curriculum. We have great coaches. It's a small group environment that you have lots of time to practice these skills and really answer your questions and work through them individually with your coach so that you really are clear, especially at the beginning with these understanding who you are and your thoughts and feelings, because we don't want to ignore them. They will take over, but sometimes they're not true. And we suffer unnecessarily because of lies that we believe or lies that we're telling ourselves, even about who we are. I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I'll never be, able to do this by myself. None of that's true. None of that's true. God has promised that he who's given you something to do, he will give you the power to do it. And if he's giving you something to do, he will give you what you need to do it.
Well,
And any final thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, he's so faithful. And we don't have to believe everything that we think. We don't have to act on every emotion that we experience. We have choices, and that's what we work on. And I just love this group because, I mean, just imagine, right? It's June, the end of June right now, and you have spent 6 months focused on being empowered to make the changes that you want to make in your life. There's not a better time. I got a Christmas card. It was super sweet, Leslie. I got to tell you this. I got a Christmas card from a friend, and it said, "I hope you have the best 2023." And I took a double take, and I was like, "We just dismissed 2022," and I just giggled because I just love this friend to bits, right? But it got me thinking. It got me thinking about how I want to show up in 2022. I don't want to be non-existent. I don't want to let my values and virtues be fear-led. I want them to be led by love. That's how I want to live out 2022. How do you want to live out 2022, girls? And what steps will you take in order to make that happen for you?
I think that's such a good question. And even just ask yourself right now, how do I want to live out 2022? So I don't want to live afraid. I don't want to live in fear of what if. I want to live every day not like it's my last, because if it was my truly last, I would do different things. But I want to live it with integrity. I want to live it with vitality. I want to live it with freedom to be authentically who I am, and knowing that. And I think, I was feeling guilty because I was reading a book recently and said, this is what you should do the first, hour of your day. You should get up and do this and this exercise, read, blah, blah, blah. And it's great. But you know what? That doesn't work for me. I'm not like a big doer first thing in the morning. I like to sit in bed for half hour, just think, read the news, pet my dog. And I'm thinking, you know what? I don't have to be what this person says I have to be. I can just do life the way I want to do it. And I like it that way. And it's freedom to say, I don't have to do what this author said, or I can figure out whether that's going to be good for me or not. And I think that's powerful because we women have been so used to doing what everybody tells us to do, to be able to evaluate and say, these are all good things, but not this time in my life. This isn't how I want to do my morning. And let it be okay. Let it be okay. No shame, no guilt trip. It's okay.
How freeing would it be not to go on that guilt trip of thinking, and removing that I should do this, I should do that. Cause I fall into the same thing. Behind this screen is a whole library of books that are going to tell me who I should be.
That's right.
There is one who knows who I am. And that's my Heavenly Father. And my work to do is to meet who God created in me, that perhaps my roles and responsibilities in life have masked it or covered it, and I haven't been able to see myself clearly. And that's why I love this community, hanging out with you, girlfriend, doing these groups, doing these lives. Because every time I come on and do a live, I learn something new about myself.
And maybe you haven't lived in a mask. You've just lived in a place where no one's invited you to do that work, that you've been so conditioned to see yourself just as a doer, not a beer, that You've never given yourself space. We've had women as old as 75 or so in Empower to Change, and it's been life-changing for them because they thought life was over for them. They thought they didn't have any goals or just exist until I close my eyes. And that's not true. And to be able to say, wow, God knows me and he's created me for purpose. And if I'm still on this planet, there's a reason for me to be here. And it's my work to figure it out. And how sad would it be for you to get to the end of your life and never know the person that God made you to be? I mean, I think that's the saddest thing in the world that I could think of, is for you to get to the end of your life and never know who you were supposed to be because you were so busy living into what everybody else told you to be, or what everybody thought you should be, or what you thought everybody wanted you to be. Listen to the Lord and be who God calls you to be. And that takes some energy and some time and some prayer and some focus. And we want to help you on that journey and Empower to Change. And if you come with us, that'd be great. We would love to help you. And if you don't, I hope you still do the work, because it still would be a shame if you got to the end of your life and not know the person you were supposed to be. God made each of us for a reason in a unique kind of way. And don't let someone else decide that for you. Let God show you who you were meant to be. Just like the acorn is meant to be an oak tree, and the sunflower seed is supposed to be a sunflower. And if the sunflower looked at the oak tree and said, why aren't I like you? You're so big and beautiful. God's saying, I didn't make you an oak tree. I made you a sunflower. Be the biggest, happiest, brightest yellow sunflower you can be. And this is what we get into trouble, ladies. We're always looking at other people and say, well, I'm not like her. I'm not good enough. And watch those not enough videos that I've just sent you, 3 of them. I'm not getting enough. I'm not doing enough. And today's video is I am not enough, because that's the comparison game. We're looking at other people saying, I don't measure up to her. I don't do what she does. I must not be enough. That's not true. The oak tree doesn't say to the maple tree, why aren't I like you? The oak tree just, and the apple tree just, and the sunflower just does its thing. And you be who God called you to be. And if you don't know that and you need to do some work, then we invite you to be a part of Empower to Change in order to do that. So go to lesliebernick.com/change, and you can read all about it. And you can read some testimonies of other women who've been empowered to change and how it's benefited them. And we would love to see you at our meeting on Friday. So sign up and hopefully we'll see you then. Anything you want to say in closing, Leanne?
That's it. No, this has just been so delightful. Such an honor to be here with you and just share space with all these beautiful ladies. And, Tamara said, I love it. I want to meet who God called me to be. And so, Tamara, what steps are you willing to take in order to make that happen? We can put a lot of declarations out there, right? I do it all. I can do it all the time. Then we get to put some feet to it and take that next best step. Do the next right thing that will help you to find out who God created you to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we have another Facebook Live on Thursday. This is going to be at the same time, noon Eastern time. I'm going to be with Coach Elise, and we're going to be talking about 3 ways for you to shed those negative emotions. So when the Bible says get rid of them, it's your responsibility. Nobody can get rid of your negative emotions but you. So we want to give you 3 tools on how to do that. There's one more question I want to answer at the end, and I'm just going to take it real quick, and then I've got to go. Deborah's asking, what if you have a great marriage and family, but your husband is struggling with an addiction and mistreats you, but you want to stay well because of kids, but your value won't be able to happen? So Deborah, you're saying a couple contradictory things. I'm not sure you have a great marriage if your husband's mistreating you and struggling with an addiction. So I think that's important for you to own and accept that he is doing some things that harm himself and harm you. And that doesn't mean you should divorce him. I'm not saying that, but it might mean that you need to get strong enough to have some boundaries and have some tough conversations with him about how he's harming himself and harming you and harming the kids. Don't think that you can cover all this up. So your kids are going to grow up knowing that you are in a home with an addict, and they're going to see his treatment of you and them while he's under the influence, if that's what's happening. And so I'm not here to decide for you at all, but I'm here to kind of contradict some of your thinking. If you're saying, I have a great marriage, but my husband is mistreating me, those don't go together. You don't have a great marriage when a husband devalues and mistreats you for any reason. All right. And so you have to decide, all right, how do I get safe? How do I stay sane and have conversations with my husband? How do I, encourage him to get the help he needs? Or what else do I need to do to let him know this isn't okay? And that may lead to a great marriage or not. You don't have control over that part. All you have control over is your side of the street. And I don't know that staying well, enabling his addiction will be beneficial to him, to you, or to your children. So I would just encourage you to think through that. All right. So I'm going to go. We are going to see you on Thursday at noon Eastern time again, talking about our negative emotions, giving you a couple more tools to learn how to let them go. These are all things we go through in depth in the Empower to Change curriculum, that if you decide to be a part of that, you will not just hear it, you will learn how to do it, which is a whole lot different. I can watch great videos on art and pickleball, but unless I pick up the paintbrush and start doing it and have my coach on my side saying, let's try it this way, I'm not going to make as much progress. So I think the hearing and doing are two different things. And so we'll be here on Thursday. We'll teach it to you. I hope that you learn to do it. And if you would like to learn how to do it in a group with a coach to help you, then check out our class, Empower to Change. All right. Take care. God bless. Thanks, Leanne. Appreciate you.
I
Bye-bye.
appreciate you.